Hey, this is Dr. Jonathan with another installation on shamanic shame. Now, shamanic shame might not sound like a familiar concept, and it might not sound like something important or relevant to you, but if you consider yourself someone who is interested in the spiritual world or on a kind of spiritual journey, then this is probably important to listen to. Now, I have done other videos about what is shamanic shame, and today I want to make an important addition to what will now be known as the 6 core characteristics of shamanic shame. I did 5 before, but there's one that has been left out that I think is remarkably important. So let's quickly summarize what is shamanic shame. What are the first 5 characteristics or components? And then let's focus a little bit on the 6th, the new addition. So shamanic shame is kind of just a catchy phrase for any experience, any ongoing experience that you may have in which you diminish, disown, or disconnect from your natural aptitudes and feelings of connection to the spirit world. Very specifically the spirit world. Now, I would certainly include experiences of energy or the energetic dimension of life and the world around us. But I would argue that a huge number of people, arguably a majority of people, at a young age have a natural sense that our world is filled with intelligent, loving beings, that the forest may be filled with fairies, that the cosmos may be filled with beings of light, that there may be such a thing as angels or spirits, guides and guardians. And yet, as we grow older, despite the experiences we have as young people, and even despite sometimes profound dreams or unexplainable encounters of long-lost relatives and so on, we fall into a kind of complex in which we simply disown and deny those beliefs and that part of who we are. Now, there are 6 things that go into this experience of denial. The first is cultural conditioning, which is pretty obvious. If you don't grow up in a community where the spirit world and the energy of things is taught or integrated or taken for granted, well, you're probably not going to get it any other way. So in the Western world today, our schools don't teach it, our workplaces don't acknowledge it. We are conditioned by media and environment and the people and things around us to simply believe that ideas of energy in the spirit world are not just wrong, but possibly delusional, and maybe even sometimes a sign of a pathology. Well, then we have the next quality, which is the fear of appropriation. So what is the fear of appropriation? Well, for a lot of, again, Western people who are seeking to reclaim their sense of spirits and their relationship to the world of energy, I'm putting this thing down, and environment, well, they don't want to be one of those people that is stealing the beliefs and practices of another. And yet, what do you do when you don't grow up with those beliefs and practices, or you weren't taught those beliefs and practices? But you got to find them somewhere. So instead of pursuing it, we just abdicate and let it go. So we find that the fear of appropriation is often a barrier to reclaiming our connection with the spirit world. The next is the need for approval. Now, if we cycle back through the first 2, of course, if we want to fit in, if we want to be seen as acceptable or reasonable or good people or whatever it is that we are afraid of not being, well, then we're just going to keep it to ourselves, or we're not going to share it easily or naturally, or we're going to let this part of ourselves go completely. The next thing that often shows up is self-doubt. Now, self-doubt is after we've gone through the previous qualities and we are willing to embrace our relationship to the spirit world, but is it real? And how do I know what's imagination? And how do I know what's just my mind making things up? And how do I know what's wishful thinking? How do I know when they're really there? So we have self-doubt even once we've decided to make the claim. The next, number 5, is, oh yes, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is what happens after we've gone through all the other levels. Now we've overcome self-doubt. Now we're going to start integrating our relationship to the spirit world in our life, maybe in our work, maybe in our healing practice. But then we fall victim to a very human tendency, which is to compare ourselves to others. And then we limit ourselves for a new and a different reason, which might be, well, I'm not as good as they are. And, I have intuition about things, but I don't get dates and numbers. Or I can feel energy, but I don't see things. So we do this comparison and we judge and diminish ourselves because of it. We don't feel we deserve a voice. I shouldn't talk about it. I can't integrate it into my life more because I'm just not that good at it. But the 6th and final thing that's incredibly important, and I hope you will look at this in your own life, especially if you are gifted in your connection to the spirit world but still struggle with it. It is the topic of intergenerational trauma. And by intergenerational trauma, I mean that in your ancestry, in your consciousness, in your past lives, you may have a profoundly painful experience of being punished, ostracized, or even killed for believing in the spirit world, for healing through the spirit world, through connecting to the spirit world. It's unbelievable, but in many parts of the world, United States and Canada especially, it wasn't until the last 50 years, that Indigenous religion and the right to practice and participate in traditional ceremonies was legally protected. Now, how's that connected? Well, only in the last 50 years have we removed the systemic punishment of people who believe in the spirit world. That's insane. And we know that hundreds of thousands of women were killed, murdered brutally for being accused as being witches. And when I say accused of being witches, I don't mean that they were accused of being something bad. I mean they were killed and punished for being something powerful. Helpers, healers, and facilitators of spirit connection. This may live inside you, and it's an important time to take a look at it, to heal it, to release it. And you can do that through ceremonial work, through shamanic journey work, through soul retrieval work, and also through hypnotherapy and other forms of regression. The most important thing is that if you feel called to a life of spirit connection, the world needs it, and you need it, and you will not feel complete or whole until you reclaim it. So consider these things and stay tuned.